How expensive is your hobby?
Depends on the game.
Nice try, wife.
I collect skulls, it's very expensive. There is a free option too, but that's a felony.
I collect rare, limited books. So it's very expensive and I cannot afford it.
Motorcycles can be surprisingly not very expensive after the initial investment. It just comes down to consumables and doing your own wrenching to keep the prices down.
I've spent more money on smoking weed than I have anything else in my entire life. I went to college.
My box of Magic the Gathering cards is worth more than both of my cars.
Warhammer.
Cooking, and now I am opening a restaurant, which is a serious money pouring into a very serious hobby. Okay, sign.
Relatively cheap once you get it going, because I managed to find extensive joy in just a few games.
My piano cost more than my car. Skeptical smiley face.
About $25 a month. There is not that much second-hand games in my country.
My hobby is to start new hobbies and then abandon them for something else after I purchase the necessary tools. So all of them.
Really expensive. Copics ain't cheap, man.
About $150 a month. The cost of internet, subscriptions, a new game and/or microtransactions.
In money, it's about €300 per month with all subscriptions and travel. With time spent, I'm looking at approximately 60 hours a month.
As expensive or as cheap as you want to make it. You can buy all the rule books, miniatures, map tiles, etc. Or you can just grab some pencils and paper, and play your heart's content. I collect vinyl records. Depending on the bands that you're into, some of their records will be expensive.
Reddit is free.
Up to $100. I guess I should sell one of my kidneys to buy a Steinway piano.
And just the costume can be £2,000 plus.
It's cycling and model railways so expensive as fuck.
Woodturning is fairly cheap, as is hiking and flat water kayaking. Sailing is not cheap to start, nor is shooting, but averaged over time, they still aren't.
Smoking is an expensive ass hobby. But it makes living on this earth tolerable so.
Very expensive. Horses never stop eating. Smiley face.
I have many hobbies, but my most expensive one is summiting international mountains.
£25 per year plus an endless supply of pens and tweezers, using GPS to find clip lock boxes and film pots in the countryside, geocaching.
Which one? Cars, home brewing, or scuba diving?
I have many hobbies, so I spend about $10K a year on them.
Depends. How much is Vaseline these days? Rolling on the floor laughing, but FR though. If I actually get serious about getting a PC or building my own, gaming's gonna get real fucking expensive.
Not sure, ask my dealer. Lol.
Which one?
Enough to consider and still cheap enough to eat and pay rent.
Reading, very expensive and time consuming too.
Sneakers and fountain pens. Spent way more than I should've. They keep releasing new grails.
Shit from the past ain't cheap, so I have to stick with browsing online shops waiting for stuff to go on sale.
Free if you have the right resources and know how to do things.
D&D is the perfect mix between the cheapest and most expensive hobby you'll ever have. And then if I pick video games, then pretty expensive.
$40,000.
Modeling warships $130 for a high-quality ship, then $80 for supplies.
Mycology, it's expensive as you want it to be. You can use cheap stuff or expensive equipment. The real investment here is time.
Violins are literally the most expensive instrument. I get $15 a game that I am in. I am a kid ref for soccer. I usually made like $70 a day before COVID.
Depending on what type of Funko Pop I'm buying and where. The older and rarer it is, might be 10 to 20. But I typically try and get sales when I do purchase them.
Painfully so.
I have multiple hobbies, but the one I'm into right now is weaving. After the initial investment, thanks, honey, for looms, my largest loom was $325. It's pretty inexpensive.
Computers, pretty expensive.
Have a gaming addiction. Cost me €1,600 per $1,900 in less than a year while I was 16.
Buying a metalhead.
Well, gaming requires a large payment once every few years, with a few minor payments a few times a year. And vaping, fuck expensive.
Once did beekeeping. Learned firsthand what economy of scale was.
I'm a teen gamer. How much does an electric bill cost for maybe 72 total hours of gaming per week?
Thousands of hours of my time. I could easily drop a few thousand and my collection would hardly grow. I collect gemstones and crystals.
Free unless you count the internet bill.
I golf, play guitar, fish and hunt. It's only expensive if you let it be.
$350 a month. I am a saxophonist.
I have many hobbies, which is quite expensive in itself. Drawing, gaming, anime, manga and so on. It can vary from $20 to $200 per month.
Gamer, so about $20 to $150 a month, depending on what was released.
VR, $500, $1,000.
Amateur radio and coin collecting can take all the money.
Photography. Cameras and lenses are so damn expensive.
Rats are such amazing pets, so loving. Waiting for the horse people to show up and drop everyone's jaw. That stuff is expensive.
In terms of writing, pretty cheap. Art, however, it soon racks up cold sweat. Smile. I'm a self-employed artist and cosplayer. Would you like to take a wild guess?
Playing a string instrument that costs £7,000.
My hobby is renovating, so I make money doing it.
3D printing. Honestly, the software cost me nothing because I cracked it, and the printers have only become cheaper over the years.
$0. It's called staring into a wall.
My stupid bicycle cost more than some people's cars. My stupid foam hat and ridiculous cycling shoes alone cost more than most people's bicycles.
Guitar and video games, depending on how far I take it, could cost anywhere between an American heart surgery and Jeff Bezos' house.
I ski. Quite expensive.
It doesn't matter, it's cheaper than a bar bill and tons cheaper than a DUI. FYI, I drag race anything on wheels and on any road.
Guitars are somewhat expensive, but they last years.
Fanfiction only costs time and my soul.
About $2,000 in total between acting classes and piano, microphone and cameras. I tend to have high buy-in hobbies but don't pay too much after.
Guitars, mechanical keyboards, retro video game collecting, PC gaming. All just a sieve for my money.
About 5 minutes.
A lot of money. For those who don't know, I collect video games and video game consoles. As for the consoles part, one don't do it often, but for the video game part one do, and I almost have 210 plus games.
Literature. Thank God for libraries.
Which hobby? The one that shocked me most was model trains. I had thought the biggest problem would be space for a layout, but the cost of equipment, damn near all of it, has been a shock.
Camping averages 15 grand a year, my offshore fishing boat another 20 plus a year, and my 31 model a car averages about 2 grand. My wife costs me about 100 grand a year.
More than €2,000.
The city library near me sells records for 25 apiece, so it's not that expensive. Sure, they're not modern, and they're all used, but they still sound great.
Old computer collecting is not that pricey. But it feels expensive when I am a poor kid.
I spend about $50 a day on pot. Even buying in bulk, I smoke too much. Don't take medications for my bipolar disorder or depression, which would cost like $400 plus a month. I think it's an even trade. It depends how depressed I am. Typically cheap, but on bad days it's hello internet, goodbye savings.
Tattoos, guitars and vinyls. All of them expensive AF, haha.
Not too expensive. Painting is fun. The real expense for me is time and the fact that I'm a perfectionist who will consider a painting a failure if one thing is fucked.
Z-scale model trains are very expensive.
Well, I just spent $2,000 on golf clubs.
Well, as long as I replace my computer every 4 years, about $300 every 4 years.
Sleeping is fairly cheap.
Art. Golf is a nightmare on the wallet.
I have lots of hobbies, like Lego and video games. Yes, they cost a ton of money, but I feel like the real expense is time.
Video games are actually a rather cheap hobby.
Well, airsoft, so 3 decent guns are like $400. The amazing stuff could go for $2,000 US. I could buy a used motorcycle for that.
$1,000 plus per hour is pretty reasonable. Flying jets and helicopters gets really expensive, really fast.
PC gaming and watches. PCs are always in the low thousands and watches have ranged anywhere from $100 to $45K for me personally.
My hobby is drawing. The amount of hands I have to kill.
Video games. Big upfront cost. Then very inexpensive.
Spend $4K on a cryocooler. Broke down after a month of use. Welcome to low temp refrigeration.
Drawing. Not really. Probably haven't spent $100 yet on some supplies.
Legos are expensive.
Cough piracy cough.
I play the oboe. They can go to more than $8,000. This does not include the cost to get new reeds every year and to make them with all the tools.
Well, I like drawing, so from really cheap to super expensive.
Drawing reasonably detailed schematics of tanks and other military equipment. So pretty damn cheap.
Expensive. I travel.
Not expensive at all. People think making art costs loads of money, but art is made by everything and anything. It's about the skill, not the supplies.
Disc golf. About $15 a disc, so I've spent about $60. The rest are from my dad and uncle.
$600 US. It's quickly climbing to $700 for RC cars and boats.
60 every 3 months, 6 every month, and 300 every 3 years.
Insanely.
Hella.